All right. I guess I should be live here. I'm just going to take a look over at the other screen and wait and see if it pops up there. All we're going to be talking about, or I guess not all, but mainly what we're going to be talking about is the primary happening tomorrow, I guess. It's tomorrow in New Hampshire. So uh, it doesn't look like it's going to be much of a race. I guess I'll just throw that out there right at the beginning. Kind of looks like Trump is just going to dominate like he did in Iowa and blow Nikki Haley out of the water. That's sort of what all of the polls seem to be saying, except one. There was like one outlier poll, which I don't know. I don't know why you would trust that one when every other poll seems to have her down by like 20 or 30 points, depending on what you look at. So it's probably going to be another big win for Trump, but this is sort of Nikki Haley's last stand. She was polling fairly decently for a while. And I mean, compared to like any other state, and especially any of the other candidates that were in the race, now it's just her and Trump. She's doing better than any of them in that respect. So she's getting like, 35%, which is just not nearly enough. But it was sort of her last stand because there they let independents vote, I guess, and even Democrats can like switch over, I suppose, and vote in the Republican primary if they register as independents early enough or something. So she was supposed to pick up a lot of that vote. Anyway, I don't know what chance she could possibly have if she doesn't win tomorrow. I don't even think she has a chance, even if she were to like win, like outright win New Hampshire. I don't think she would have a chance of winning anywhere else. So I'm not sure why it would matter that much. But that was kind of the idea. She was going to try to win this state and then get momentum and money and maybe win South Carolina. It's her home state. And then go on from there. I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening at all. It just looks worse for her, actually, since the other candidates dropped out. You had, was it yesterday or the day before? It's pretty big news. Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race. It's kind of the big news for a while there. And if anything, that just helps Trump because most of his support is going to go straight to Trump. Is what it looks like. So I don't know. I don't think I've heard people talking about like, well, what if she overperforms? What if she, loses by like 7 points or something, which would still be a bad loss. It's just not as bad as she's supposed to lose by. I don't know what these people are smoking. Like to me, um even if she outright wins, I just don't even think it's gonna help her that much. I'm not sure what she's still doing in the race other than like I guess there's miracles can happen. So I mean maybe that's why she's there. She's just like there to be the alternative choice. And you never know. Like something could happen. Something horrible could happen to Trump. You just don't know. So I guess it's worth having her around. I'm not sure. Another odd kind of story though, that's building up, which sort of does make this an interesting race. It doesn't have anything really to do with uh, Nikki versus Trump. It's more about Trump versus Biden, and apparently there's like a little bit of a side contest here to see which of them doesn't like suck as much as the other one because they're effectively both incumbents pretty much. Like Trump technically isn't, but he was just president. He's basically an incumbent. And Joe Biden absolutely is an incumbent president. And so there's this idea that they're trying to, I guess, battle to be the incumbent or not be the incumbent that performs like the worst in New Hampshire, I guess. So there's this other guy, Dean Phillips. He's like, I guess the Nikki Haley of the Democrats. He's in the race against Biden, and in New Hampshire, he's been polling well compared to other places, I suppose, which is sort of right around kind of where Nikki was in some of the polls. He's polling around like 30 or 35, somewhere in there, 28. Different polls say different stuff. And I guess the idea is you want to see whether Biden gets less of a portion of his own party than Trump does, or if Trump gets less of a portion of his party than Biden does. So that could be interesting, I suppose. They could sort of use that to talk shit about one another, or I don't even know. Like, it wouldn't be much bragging rights if you're like, yeah, I won my own party by like 60 points, and the other guy only won by 55 points. It's like, those are both terrible. Those are both pretty terrible numbers for incumbent presidents. And I guess they could always fall back on, well, Trump's not technically the incumbent. It's like, yeah, I guess, man. But that'll be interesting to see. I'll probably stream the race tomorrow, just in case. You never know. You never know. Sometimes crazy stuff happens. I streamed. Used to stream a lot of riots just to see like what would happen, what would go on. Sometimes insane stuff. Like I was streaming a riot one time, and what was that Minneapolis time, and they just randomly torched like an entire city. And it kind of came out of nowhere. That was a interesting thing. So you never know. I'll probably watch that just to see. It's just something to do, something to stream. I know at one point I said I was going to be streaming on Fridays. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'm never going to set a an actual schedule to do things at like a specific time. I've tried though. I've tried to stay about like once a week, but it's just sort of random days throughout the week. So we'll probably stick with that. But I think I'm going to do it tomorrow. I watched the Iowa one, and I think this one in certain respects will be more interesting. I mean, I don't know. The Iowa one was pretty boring because it was kind of like you had the results pretty much in like 30 minutes of it starting. Like it was already done. There's less that could happen, I guess, in this one since there's less candidates. It's more just about how well is Nikki going to do, and how much of a portion of the vote does she eat up. And it's also a weird thing too because the Republicans are pretty overwhelmingly for Trump in the state. She's losing, it's like 25 to 75 Republican voter breakdown. But like 40% of the voters in the Republican primary, apparently in New Hampshire, 40 to 45% are not Republicans. So that's kind of a weird kind of monkey wrench getting thrown into this one. So that could, maybe have some effect. You never know. It'll be somewhat interesting. I thought we would take a listen, though, to our dearly departed candidate from yesterday, Ron DeSantis. Listen to his going away speech. It was, my God. He's like a broken man at this point. I think he'll bounce back. He'll go back. He'll be governor of Florida. Trump will probably fall in love with him again. They'll be best bros, I imagine. Because as soon as he dropped out, he just endorsed Trump. So usually when people say nice things about Trump, he says nice things about them. So he tends to get over certain grudges, maybe not some other ones, but we'll take a look at Ron DeSantis's goodbye. Sweet, sweet goodbye. All right, let's see here. What tab did I have it on? Oh, here we go. All right, is he up there? Oh, God. I don't think in this video clip, this is probably like the best example I've ever seen of, you know, that thing people will talk about where they'll be like, well, his mouth is smiling, but his eyes are not, or his eyes are crying or whatever. I feel like this is a prime example of that throughout this speech here. He just looks very sad up in the eyes, but like tries to like smile and be positive as he does another one of these freaking obnoxious, like pre-canned speech things. He's just so bad at this. He's so bad at this. Whatever. We'll let him talk here. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean.
The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've chosen public service. From joining the United States Navy and serving in Iraq to representing the people in the U.S. Congress and now serving as governor of Florida. And it reminds me why I decided to run for president, to fight for those who have been forgotten in this country. This is America's time for choosing. We can choose to allow a border invasion, or we can choose to stop it. We can choose reckless borrowing and spending, or we can choose to limit government and lower inflation.
See, that's kind of what I'm talking about. He just runs through this same exact series of lines every time with basically no variation. I can't even count how many times I've heard him say like this exact string of 24 words. It's it's kind of annoying. Like you could say the same thing in a different way. You could add some like, I don't know, some personality to it. Isn't that what everyone was like criticized him for throughout the campaign and like forever is he has like zero personality. And I feel like it's just he's bad at giving speeches. He's delivering the lines, right? But you got to improvise a little bit, man. Like you come off like a robot when you talk this way.
We can choose political indoctrination, or we can choose.
And it's not even that he's reading from a script. Like there's other candidates. You go watch them and people get coached on this, right? Where you can read from a script and not sound like a robot. It is possible. Like any freaking news anchor, right? That reads a teleprompter, which is basically all of them. They don't sound like this.
Classical education. These choices are symptoms of the underlying struggle to ensure that constitutional government can endure and that Western civilization can survive. And we launched this campaign to bring accountability to government, regain sovereignty at our border, and restore sanity to our society. We cannot succeed as a country if we allow our nation to be invaded, our currency to be debased, our cities to crumble, and our kids to be indoctrinated. The DC elites who facilitated this mess.
He spends like the first half of this just giving his freaking campaign speech again. I might skip some of it. It's kind of boring. Like I feel like he could have done better. He doesn't do that bad. If you see him in like hostile interviews with reporters and stuff, he does have some like natural things that go against him, right? There's his voice. He's got this kind of annoying sounding voice. So that's just sort of naturally not in his favor. But whenever he's like going against the reporters, it's not so bad. It's not like great, but it's he'll do the thing where some reporter asks him like, Mr. DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, why are you trying to like steal healthcare from children and prevent minors from getting healthcare? And he's like, excuse me, we're not doing that. That's a lie. We're just not going to allow 5-year-olds to have sex change operations in the state of Florida. That's what we're going to do. And what you're doing right now is very dishonest. I just want you to know that. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's still kind of annoying, but it's like, it's not like this, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's effective in that he'll just like go through and correct them and not let the bullshit fly through. I think that was one of the best things he did was when you put him in there with someone that was trying to bullshit him. He's not as good as Trump because Trump won't, he'll just fly off the rails and start calling people names and stuff, which is much more entertaining. But DeSantis always had the thing where he could just like point to, no, this is actually what we're doing. What you're doing is lying. And he just like calmly sort of corrects the record. But whatever, didn't serve him very well. We ended up here where he could have, I do think he could have done better. I know a lot of people have said this. I think, and this is not, particularly unique advice, if he had come out just right after the 2022 elections and had just started calling Trump a loser, maybe not right after, because you don't want to just like win the election for governor and then just immediately start running for president, even though you kind of did that anyway. But, maybe he announces in December or something like that. Still very early. And at that point, all the Republicans had kind of not been super positive about Trump, I guess you could say, after all of his candidates had just lost their general elections. And Ron DeSantis won huge. I think at that point, if he had come out riding that little wave of popularity and saying, like, Trump's policies were good, but he's basically a loser and he's losing us elections. And you can get me and I can do the policies and I can win. And we just don't need him and blah, 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 blah. And you just do all that. And then maybe even mention the crap he tried to, about like, oh, they're COVID and Fauci. He probably talked about Fauci too much, honestly. But he I think if he had done it when he was popular, he could have maintained, he could have held on to some more of his support. Because I think in this day and age, once you get people, even if it's like they like him now and they're stating that they like him now, a lot of the times they're going to do it publicly on social media, and then they're less likely to return back and flip and change their mind. I think that's true, and so I think he could have done that and could have posed a challenge and maybe kept some of the other people out of the race, but no, didn't do that. He also didn't he like refuse to go on like mainstream media? I feel like that's true. He would only go on to like weird like Twitter interviews. I assume he went on Fox. He must have. He would have been like batshit insane if he didn't go on Fox News. But I'm pretty sure he would refuse to go on any like you know like CNN or ABC or CBS or any of that shit, uh, which is really stupid. You should go on every platform that you possibly can. Crazy. Anyway, enough about him. Let's get to the end of his speech because he does his whole like, oh, the country's going to hell and blah blah blah. Where are we? Let's go here because he does like pull out like a shiv and just like knife Nikki Haley on his way out here, endorse Trump, and fall straight back to like Team MAGA or whatever, which is kind of what everyone's doing. Nikki Haley's the last one standing, so
thrown at him, but no candidate had so many committed volunteers and staff. Finally, I want to thank my wife, Casey, and our kids, Madison, Mason, and Mamie. Casey's gone far
Madison, Mason, and Mamie. I didn't know he did that. All Emma names.
above and beyond in her support for our campaign and for our cause. She's not only a great wife and mother, she's a great American who cares deeply about the future of the country that our kids will inherit. Our kids have seen and done a lot on the trail, from playing on the famed Field of Dreams baseball site in Iowa to making their first snowman in New Hampshire. They are one of the reasons we fight so hard for what we believe in. Winston Churchill once remarked
Why
that
am I getting these?
success is not final, failure is not, but no candidate had so many committed volunteers and staff. Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the
Oh, here
old
we go.
Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents.
What does that even mean? A repackaged form of warmed over corporatism. I'm not even sure what that means. Like, what's Nikki do? What's she supporting? That's corporatism. It like I don't understand. Is he like implying that she's for free trade, something like that, like less protectionist? I That's all I can guess. But like, does anyone really? I don't know. Care that much about that? I feel like unless he's implying that she's like for I don't know, open borders. Um, what was it? They were trying to say. I don't know if he was. I know Trump was trying to say that Nikki Haley like wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare and these types of things, which is bizarre that a Republican is a Republican candidate is like accusing another Republican of like uh you know austerity measures, like being in favor of fiscal austerity. Seems crazy. Like I thought that was like a Republican thing, but I guess not anymore. I guess no one is in favor of fiscal conservatism anymore. That's sort of weird. But I that's all I could guess. And Nikki Haley's not even in favor of that. I don't know if I've ever heard her say like we're going to get in and slash spending. Has she talked about the deficit? Maybe. I assume if you're talking about the deficit, I don't know how else you're going to cut the deficit if you're not going to cut stuff like that, because we're not in debt for any other reason. We're not in debt because of our military spending. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard anyone say. That's such a drop in the bucket. Crazy. I mean, I know all these people say that. Like, oh, we have $30 trillion in debt because we invaded Afghanistan. It's like, no, actually, that's not why. That doesn't cost anything like $30 trillion. Holy crap. All right. Well, I guess that's enough of DeSantis. He's gone. I don't know. Well, there's no point in talking about him. He's no longer with us. Bernie Sanders ass rhetoric. Yeah, that's kind of the Trump sort of thing. I don't know. Um, I hope Nikki Haley does well. I don't think she will. Like, believe me, there's no one else. No other person would like to see her win more than I would. I think that would be amazing. I think that would be great. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's happening. Well, I've already been on for 20 minutes here, and like I said, I'm going to come on tomorrow, so um, probably won't go too much longer here. And I don't have much more to say. Like, what are you going to say at this point? It's all just waiting around, speculation. I think I'll say this. I'll give a prediction. Might as well, and it's not going to be the prediction that I'll try and make it a little bit interesting, I guess. I'm not going to predict she's going to win. I'm not going to do that. I'm not that brave. I do think she's going to do better than expected. So, and what am I basing this on? Just nothing, like hopes and dreams, I guess. I'll predict that. Let's be brave here. I'll predict that she has a loss that's within, like, it's a 1-digit loss. How about that? A 1-digit loss. So for that, she could lose, but she has to lose between 9 points to 1 point. So that's what I'll say. That'll be my bet. Take it at the bank. All right. Rip Meatball Ron. We hardly knew you. Very true. Just for the possibility that Trump might drop dead. Yeah, but I mean, even if that happened, I don't know if she would get it. It would just like go to his VP probably. I guess at the convention they would pick somebody else. What do you do if like your party, if your nominee drops dead like after the primary but before the general? Does the VP pick just become the candidate? I feel like that's the most logical thing, right? I can't imagine what else. And that's another thing. Trump's VP, there's been some information about that. I saw that it was cut down to essentially 3 people, I believe. I forget who reported this. But it was, what's her name? Oh, God, I can't think of her name now. I want to say she's like a New York representative or something. I can't remember. Elise Stefanik? Is it Elise Stefanik? Or is that somebody else? I'm getting that wrong. I feel like that's right, though. And some other dude, JD Vance, the writer, and Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is apparently one of the choices, which I highly doubt at this point. Given the things Trump has said about her, how could he possibly pick her as VP? He's called her like, she's made an I need a better Trump voice. Let me see. Nikki Haley, she's made an unholy alliance with Democrats and China. With rhinos and Democrats. Yeah. So he's called her like a China supporter and stuff. So I feel like it's going to be Stefanik or JD Vance. Staying Stefanik. Yeah, it's Stefanik. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think she could get it. Not given what Trump said. I think earlier, if she had dropped out much earlier or like endorsed him possibly, because she checks a lot of boxes. She, because what you want is someone that can bring in people that are not you. So you don't want like you don't want someone that's just like you as a VP pick. So if you're like trying to get maybe some more people that are moderates and independents that are going to be like cool with you, it's like, oh well, Nikki Haley's going to be a part of this shit show, so we're not going to be like totally crazy. She's going to be there. She'll be a voice of reason. Maybe it won't be so bad. And it's like a way to moderate. And then you would also have the VP debates, which would be kind of like Nikki Haley would just blow Kamala Harris out of the water. She would rip her to shreds in that debate. So that could be helpful to make news. And it would be helpful that Nikki Haley's also a woman of color. So they wouldn't be able to say anything about that like when it's Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris, and she just like shreds her to pieces. So that could be pretty useful. But I just can't imagine, because they also can't be too different. That's the other thing. They can't be like antithetical. You're not going to want somebody, like if you do win, you don't want somebody that's just going to be undermining you at every turn as a part of your administration. Even though Trump apparently he didn't really seem to mind doing that last go around, he had people in there that did not share his worldview, like at all. Like John Bolton and several other people that were essentially working to undermine him. Particularly once he started going really off the rails. But yeah, I don't think so. I think it's going to be either JD Vance or Stefanik. Probably Stefanik, if that's even the right person. Zayas says it is here, and that's the name that popped into my brain. So must be right. Feel like it'll probably be her. She's a woman. So people say, well, that shouldn't matter. Well, it does. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in. JD Vance, I don't know what he brings to the table. He's from Ohio, right? So that's not even like a swing state, right? And what does he represent that's different than Trump? Am I missing something on that? Isn't he like a MAGA guy? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I know he wrote like a book that was popular, uh, but I don't really know that much else about him, other than he's like very. I thought he was like populist conservative, like he was MAGA type stuff. So I don't know. Stefanik, from what I remember, is she more moderate? I think she is. Um, Neither here nor there. Anyway, I guess I'll talk about this stuff a little bit more tomorrow. I'll stream the New Hampshire primary maybe, and we'll see if it takes more than 30 minutes for them to call the race like they did last time. That was a lot of people were upset about that. Before there was like hardly any voting. I want to say they called it with like 1% of the vote in on most of the major networks. Like literally people were still voting. Like most of the voting I don't even think had finished or actually taken place. I think they called it on the basis of their exit polls, and people were upset saying like, you had these major news networks saying Trump won, and then they were saying like, well, people could have heard about that, on their smartphones or whatever during the caucuses, and it could have influenced their vote. It's like they're still voting, and here's ABC News just called the race for Donald Trump. Like, well, what the hell are we even doing here? And they just like stop or decide to vote for Trump or whatever, which, I think is right. I don't think you should. I don't think you should call the race until at least until the voting's finished. I think you should wait for that. And then if you only have like 1% of the results, but you already know, at least at that point, you're not like influencing the outcome, which I doubt that they did, because the outcome was so massively disparate that I don't think it mattered that much at all. But still, I think if you're a major news network, you should kind of wait to call the race until they've actually stopped voting at least. Anyway, I guess we'll see how it goes tomorrow. With all that out of the way, I guess I'll see you tomorrow night, maybe, probably, and have a good night.